Thursday morning, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com. Live once again. Where else would any of us be but at home? It is definitely Thursday morning. Never mind the fact that it's dark outside that window. Totally Thursday morning. I'm in no way, shape, or form doing this on Wednesday night to get ready for Thursday. It is totally Thursday morning. And once again, this is your goldenblack.com daily quarantine simulcast here. Which we put up on video, on our social media channels, on YouTube, on our website at goldenblack.com, but also our podcast platform at Golden Black Radio. It's brought to you by our sponsors once again. Follett's Purdue Bookstores, Purdue Federal Credit Union, the 6th Street Dive Restaurant, First Source Bank, East End Grill, and the Charters Team Remax Ability Plus. Want to remind you, as always, the 6th Street Dive in Lafayette remains open for carryout orders, as do our friends of the business, Arnie's and Bruno's. Also wanted to mention one of our other sponsors, the Whitaker Inn in West Lafayette. They are also doing carryout orders. It's my understanding. Please keep them in mind as well if you want to support our local businesses. Or if you just want some really good food, please keep them in mind. The 6th Street Dive Restaurant, Arnie's, Bruno's, and the Whitaker Inn in West Lafayette. Today's quick topic, this one should be quick, hopefully. Yesterday being Wednesday, of course, because today is totally Thursday, the NCAA extended its recruiting dead period to May 31st. This is probably not altogether surprising, given that there's still so much uncertainty remaining as in terms of when normalcy is gonna resume, not only in college sports but life. But it is significant. It is potentially impactful to the process, and that's my topic I wrote down for today that I'm just going to talk about here for the next 10 minutes or so. Hopefully not 10, but hopefully 10 total. There will be no in-person, basically, recruiting that can be done now until at least May 31st. Obviously, coaches can still call recruits, can still talk to recruits, can still interact with them from a distance, but they cannot host them for visits. They cannot go see them. They cannot go watch them, anything like that. Obviously, this is very significant. The off-season is prime visit season. There are evaluation periods that will have come and gone by the time this moratorium has run its stated course. But the bigger question is, what impact does this have on kids and their decisions and their ability to go through the process? This 2020 class, this 2021 class in football and in basketball will go through this process in an unprecedented manner because a significant portion of the recruiting cycle will have been removed. And obviously, this isn't like a spring sport athlete in the NCAA where they can just give you kind of a do-over to make you whole. This is, you got to make your decision and enroll at a certain time. So these recruits going through this cycle at this point in time are doing so in an abridged fashion. What kind of impact that has on the process? A couple of quick thoughts. Football is pretty significant. I think June 1st was the real hot button date on all of this for a couple of reasons. And obviously May 31st rubs right up against that. June, as we've talked about here before, and I'm trying not to be too repetitive with these topics I'm choosing for this thing, June is the new official visit season. It is the new December and January in terms of the majority of kids are going to take their official visits in the summer. The majority of them are going to decide then and there, and a large portion of them are going to be committed by September 1st on their way to signing right before the holiday. As part of the NCAA's new early signing period. In a couple of years, that signing period might be September 1st for all we know, but for now it's still December, and it's an important part of the process for these guys to be able to get their official visits in during the summer. Whether that's still going to happen or not remains to be seen. If all things are clear on June 1st, no reason to think that still can't happen. But as of right now, the moratorium bumps right up against that hot button date of June 1st. The other football recruiting dynamic in terms of June is camps. June is the month for on-campus camps, and that's a really big portion of the recruiting calendar in terms of coaches' ability to get players on campus to evaluate them in person, but also players' ability or opportunity to go see a bunch of different places, interact with a bunch of different coaching staffs, but also get a dose of reality in terms of what their recruitment is actually going to look like. If one school wants you bad and they've offered you and they've made it clear to you they want you, and then you go to a bunch of camps to some perhaps bigger name schools and they don't offer you then and there, you have a pretty good idea what's going on. And it might be a pretty good idea for you to commit to those places that have been with you from day one. June is a huge dose of reality for a lot of football recruits, and what it does is it accelerates their decisions because that's really the moment when the game of musical chairs takes hold, and kids realize that maybe I ought to jump on the best situation I can find right now instead of holding out for somebody who may or may not even end up wanting me. That's a very significant portion of this. Now, the camp issue here too is, are they going to be there? Are they going to actually happen? And did I just number that or letter that? Did I say one or did I say A? I don't remember. My second point is my 2/B point there is that these guys have been sitting at home for months, or will have been sitting at home basically for months. There have been no organized football activities. There's been no substantive training in most cases. Obviously, we've talked about before, some guys might have some barbells in their garage. They might be working out. They might be staying in shape. Some guys might get some running in and whatnot, but there will have been very little to no actual football activity. So is it a great idea for a kid to come out on June 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever it may be, and actually go into a football camp after he's been largely idle for weeks or months? Again, the same as it is with the NCAA, the player safety has to be the most important part here. You wonder if there's going to be camps at all. It might be up to the individual schools, might be up to the NCAA to put out some sort of blanket statement. The last thing you want is for some rogues out there to take some liberties with what they consider to be player safety and to have a competitive advantage because of it. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that gets handled. In men's basketball, I don't know why I'm specifying men's basketball. I guess they're both largely the same, although I don't cover women's basketball recruiting. I don't know when their evaluation periods are. I don't know when their anything is. But in terms of men's basketball, obviously June is also a significant month because there is a June evaluation period now. That is the evaluation period intended for scholastic events, which means high school team camps, things like that. The NCAA, in its infinite wisdom, implemented this other evaluation period starting, I believe, last year in response to the infinite wisdom of the Rice Commission, because we all know high school coaches are all to a man beacons of virtue and could never be corrupted in any way, shape, or form, whereas AAU coaches are obviously the root of all evil, according to the NCAA. I'm obviously being sarcastic here. So they implemented this scholastic event evaluation period, which went pretty well last year. I think there's probably some tweaking to be done. The tweaking to be done is the least of the NCAA's concerns right now. But if there's to be another June evaluation period, again, this May 31st moratorium is bumping right up against it now. So we'll see if that happens. June in men's basketball. Recruiting is also camp month. That is not as big a deal in basketball as it is in football, but a lot of schools have team camps, which is a really beneficial proprietary evaluation opportunity for colleges, a great opportunity for them to get their top players on campus for basically free unofficial visits, although their purpose for being on campus is to play with their teams, not take recruiting visits. But that is another relatively important part of the recruiting process. The main evaluation period obviously is in July. Whether there's going to be a July, obviously we don't know. I've heard some talk, whether it's legitimate talk or simply suggestion, that maybe there can be a September evaluation period this year. If the summer gets blown up by all of this, we'll kind of see what happens. September is an important month for coaches to be with their teams also. And, in the spirit of student athlete welfare, whatever it may be, coaches are probably best suited to be with their teams in those first few weeks of that fall semester when guys, perhaps there are more pitfalls for guys in terms of everybody being on campus at that point in time, new classes starting. Obviously, all the newcomers will be enrolled in June, but that official start of school is a pretty significant date in the start of all of these guys' college careers. There are practices going on. There are individual workouts going on at that point in time. Coaches would probably like to be with their teams. That being said, if that's their only opportunity to have an evaluation period, you got to do what you got to do because you have to see these players. What the events would even look like, the evaluation events would even look like, it would almost have to be all high school stuff. There would almost be no grassroots stuff at all if there's no July. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. This moratorium only goes till May 31st on paper. If that is the end of it, none of us know. Then there is a June, there is a July, and things are relatively normal. If not, things get a little silly in terms of the evaluation period, in terms of the recruiting process in general. The bigger issue here in basketball is, what does this do to players' timeframes? What does this do to players' mindsets as they approach recruiting? There is no spring evaluation period. There will have been no spring visits of any kind, official, unofficial, whatever. Does this move guys up? I think that basketball recruits are going a little bit more the way of football recruits, where the process is accelerating a little bit. I think junior year official visits have had a little bit to do with that. You've seen at Purdue, specifically, Ethan Morton and Jaden Ivey last year very abruptly committed before they went into their spring grassroots seasons, basically, more or less. Had they waited a little bit longer, who knows how many more people would have recruited Jaden Ivey. Obviously, Ethan Morton had a lot of his offers early. He didn't really need to get seen as much, but he made a pretty quick decision relative to what the process used to typically look like in terms of going into the fall, making official visits, whatever else. I think just in general, Caleb First, you saw him pop for Purdue late in the regular season, extremely early. You're seeing more and more guys do this, and I think at Purdue, it has a lot to do with the fact Purdue's doing a good job building a relationship with these guys and convincing them this is what they want early in the process. But also, I think that junior year official visits have really helped because that takes guys deeper into the process quicker and puts them in a better position to decide on things sooner. But we will see what kind of impact this has on basketball recruits. I've kind of said that you wonder if you're not going to see kind of a run of to hell with it commitments here, where it's like, I'm not going to wait this out to take more visits when I've got this team who all want me and have shown me they want me, who I've already visited a number of times. From a Purdue perspective, the Trey Kaufmans, the Harrison Ingrams, players like that who have been recruited very seriously, taken multiple visits now, have a pretty good idea of what Purdue is and what Purdue has to offer. Those guys might be in a pretty decent position to make decisions anyway. Max Christie being another one, Blake Wesley being another one. You kind of wonder if this whole, nothing's going to happen for the next 3 months, so what can possibly change here? I'm just going to look at what I have now, kind of process what I like about them, who likes me the most, things like that, and just go ahead and make a decision. You just don't know, but I think that's kind of the way basketball recruiting is going anyway. So that's kind of one dynamic to keep in mind here. Purdue's not involved in the transfer market this year, but all hell breaks loose now for the transfer market because these guys are going to have to basically pick out of a catalog here, literally, because their ability to visit the campuses they would be enrolling at in June is now 0. So literally, you're picking a college out of a catalog. You're going to have to look at pictures on the website. You're going to have to do little virtual tours, as schools are doing for recruiting nowadays, but you're not stepping foot on that campus if you haven't already, because there's no in-person recruiting. There's no recruiting visits, period. It is going to be a really, really fascinating time for the transfer wire, but also a really fascinating time for recruiting in general, both in football and basketball. We will see if this pushes guys, again, in football and basketball alike, to just say to hell with it. I like this school. They like me. I've been there already. I'm not going to have a chance to see a bunch of other places. I'm just going to go ahead and commit. You haven't really seen that happen, at least from Purdue's perspective yet in football. Obviously, you haven't seen it happen yet in basketball. This is all still so new, but it is entirely plausible that there's going to be a run of decisions here coming from the fact that recruiting is basically paralyzed right now for months. And, obviously schools can continue talking to people, talking to recruits, so these guys have a better idea of what these schools are all about without having to necessarily set foot on campus if they haven't already. So it is going to be a really interesting time to see what effect this extended moratorium on in-person recruiting is going to have on recruiting. So something to monitor, obviously, over the last couple of months. The activity that occurs when there is literally no other activity will be very interesting to follow. So that's what I got for today. This was your goldenblack.com Daily Quarantine Simulcast, brought to you by our sponsors. Follow us, Purdue Bookstores, Purdue Federal Credit Union, the 6th Street Dive Restaurant, First Source Bank, East End Grill, and the Charters Team Remax Ability Plus. Want to remind you once again, if you are foraging, please don't do it outside of your house. Right now, if you're considering your dinner options for tonight, looking for carryout, looking to support your local businesses, please keep in mind 6th Street Dive, which continues to offer carryout, Bruno's, Arnie's, and the Whitaker Inn in West Lafayette. So please keep them in mind. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for listening. Since it is totally Thursday morning here, even though the sun's not up, as you can see, I will be back with you on Friday, and maybe, just maybe, I will have shaved. To be honest with you, why in the hell do any of us have to shave right now? So thanks, everybody. Take care.